Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I wish I would like to be with you, but because of some visa problems, I couldn't make it. And I thank you very much for this timely and very important event and for inviting me. And let me start with a memoir when the first Syrian refugees arrived Turkey in March 2011, almost a decade ago. I visited the refugee camp and talked with the refugees. And after some time, I asked a young man, "What do you think about the future?" He just took time and told me, "I have no future." Then I understood the first thing we have to give these people is hope about the future. As Professor Beretta said, in this case, hope is very, very important. So today we have been discussing, a critical and multifaceted topic, the role of migration in addressing economic and ecological crisis. Migration has assumed newfound significance in an era marked by unprecedented challenges from climate change, economic disparities, and growing human population. Migration often viewed through the narrow lens of political discourse. In fact, it is a complex and dynamic process that can play a pivotal role in mitigating the economic and ecological crises that confront our world. Before delving into the role of migration, let us first comprehend the gravity of the crisis we face today, as also underlined by my colleagues. On one hand, we are grappling with economic disparities that perpetuate poverty, deprive individuals of opportunities, and worsen social inequality over the globe. On the other hand, the ecological crisis, primarily driven by climate change, threatens the very existence of life on our planet. It means it is a challenge to all creatures. Rising global temperatures, sea level rise, extreme weather events, and biodiversity loss are just a few manifestations of this crisis. Just remember the tragic floods in Libya, which cost dozens and dozens of lives and devastating results, which will impact the future of this country and people for coming decades. So, economic disparities and ecological degradation are intrinsically linked. The poorest communities often bear the brunt of environmental degradation, while the affluent few are more likely to contribute to climate change through consumption and wasteful practices. The vicious circle calls for a comprehensive response transcending borders and national interests. All this reminds me of the call of eco-feminist philosopher Joanne Macy a decade ago, who warns us with the following words. She made an experiment with many people. Quote, dangerous, frightening, out of control. As we go around the room, people are calling out the word or phrase that comes to mind as they complete this sentence. When I consider the condition of our world, I think things are getting dangerous, frightening, out of the control. Over the last few decades, Joanne says, we have done this process with tens of dozens of people in a wide range of settings. The responses we hear echo survey findings that show high levels of alarm about the future we are heading into. Such widespread anxiety is well-founded. As our world heats up, deserts expand, and extreme weather events become more common, as we see in the case of Libya and other places, human population and consumption are increasing at the same time as essential resources such as fresh water, fish stocks, topsoil, and oil reservoirs are in decline. After a decade, we can add to what Professor Macy said to this global phenomena, the flood of migration from the global south to the north. The Guardian newspaper outlined it with a headline 2 years ago. The century of climate migration, the Guardian says. Why we need a plan for the great upheaval. Quote, a great upheaval is coming. Climate-driven movement of people is adding to a massive migration already underway to the world's cities. The number of migrants has doubled globally over the past decade, and the issue of what to do about rapidly increasing populations of displaced people will only become greater and more urgent. To survive climate breakdown will require a planned and deliberate migration of a kind humanity has never before undertaken, unquote. When we have been trying to understand this global challenge and come up with creative and constructive solutions, politicians still spend trillions of dollars on making war. Nobel Prize-winning economist Professor Joseph Stiglitz and his colleague Linda Bilmes calculated that the United States had spent more than $3 trillion on the war in Iraq. You can add to this other countries' race to the arms. So it is time for decision makers to listen and cooperate with the voice of academia and all concerned parties to find a more humane and exclusive solution to the problem. As we know, economic factors have historically driven both internal and international migration. People have migrated in search of better livelihoods, improved working conditions, and access to resources. In the face of financial crises, such as recession or job shortages, individuals often migrate to regions or countries with more robust economic opportunities, and this phenomenon has both positive and negative implications. On the one hand, migration can help alleviate economic crisis by redistributing the global workforce. Moreover, it can fill labor gaps in host countries, contribute to economic growth, enhance productivity. This not only benefits migrants, but also supports the financial stability and development of receiving countries. However, it is essential to acknowledge that migration can also impair economic disparities. Migrants often leave economically vulnerable communities, leading to a brain drain in their home countries. This can perpetuate a cycle of underdevelopment and hinder the economic prospects of nations struggling to retain their skilled workforce. So, migration also plays a pivotal role in responding to ecological crises, particularly climate change. As I said earlier, the rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and changing agriculture patterns force vulnerable populations to migrate from their homes. This movement, often called climate migration or environmental migration, is projected to increase in coming decades, as we said earlier. For example, low-lying coastal communities are displaced due to sea level rise. As entire regions become uninhabitable, people must seek refuge in more stable environments. While this migration may alleviate immediate threats, it raises ethical, legal, and logistical challenges for migrants and host countries. Additionally, the ecological crisis themselves can be worsened by migration. As displaced populations seek new areas for settlement, they may contribute to the deforestation, resource depletion, urban sprawl, putting additional pressure on already fragile ecosystems. Therefore, this explosive planetary drama demands a dynamic human response. We must help people move from danger and poverty to safety to comfort, to build a more resilient global society for everyone's benefit. Given the complex interplay of migration, economic crisis, and ecological challenges, it is evident that a coordinated and holistic approach is necessary. Policy measures at both national and international levels are crucial to managing migration to maximize its benefits while mitigating its adverse effects. We can do first protection of vulnerable populations. Nations should develop comprehensive policies to protect and support vulnerable migrants, including those displaced by environmental factors. This involves recognizing the legal status of climate refugees and providing humanitarian aid and resettlement assistance. This is done by some countries very well, but in some countries it is neglected, and some countries have to develop and put these policies in practice. Climate resilience and mitigation, addressing the ecological crisis, must be a global priority. Investment in climate resilience measures, such as coastal defenses and drought-resistant agriculture, can reduce the need for forced migration. Doing this, we can keep these people in their land, in their country, in their home. But just neglecting them, ignoring them, not addressing their problems, we will encourage them, we will force them to migrate, because for a better living being, they have to migrate. As a colleague said, that this is why the Mediterranean Sea is becoming as a grave, a great grave for the migrants. So, this is my proposal, if we can help these people to solve their problems in their country and provide them education and basic skills how to cope with these problems, I think we can mitigate the number of migrants. The third, labor mobility and skill development. Policies promoting labor mobility and skill development can ensure that economic migration benefits sending and receiving countries. Bilateral agreements that facilitate the temporary movement of workers can be mutually advantageous. Fourth, global economic reforms. Addressing economic disparities requires reforms at the international level. This includes measures to reduce income inequality, regulated financial markets, and provide opportunities for economic development in less privileged regions. Here I want to remind you the work and the project of Professor Kate Raworth from the Oxford University, done at economy. And she said very clearly, the classical economic system is not sustainable. Therefore, we need a sustainable economic system for us, for migrants, for the rest of the world. Because we are living in a global world, we cannot ignore other regions and other communities. So, protecting ecosystem and biodiversity is vital in the face of ecological crisis. The force to conserve natural resources and promote sustainable practices can reduce the displacement of communities dependent on these resources. Sixth, the data collection and research. Governments and international organizations should invest in research and data collection to better understand migration dynamics, economic crisis, and ecological challenges. If we can understand what is happening in these countries, then we can help them. But without understanding these countries, without understanding the impact of climate change and droughts and floods in these regions, and then helping them, we cannot stop this migration. To conclude, in conclusion, we should remember the United Nations International Organization for Migration has cited estimates of as many as 1 billion environmental migrants in the next 20 years. After 2050, that figure is expected to soar as the world heats further and global population rises to its predicted peak in the mid-2060s. So, the question for humanity becomes, what does a sustainable world look like in the future? We must develop an entirely new way of feeding, fueling, and maintaining our lifestyles while reducing atmospheric carbon levels. We must live in denser concentrations in fewer cities while reducing the associated risk of crowded population, including power outrage, sanitation problems, overheating, pollution, and infectious diseases. However, migration may offer potential solutions when approached with a holistic and cooperative mindset. I mean, a mindset of journalists without borders, doctors without borders. Today, we have to think. We have to think out of our national borders. With nation-state mentality and with the rise of, far-right movements, we cannot solve the problem of migration. We need a new mindset which does not recognize any borders. I mean, what we environmentalists we like to say, we have to think globally and act locally. Okay, so equity, sustainability, and empathy principles should guide our response to this crisis. Only through concentrated efforts at all levels can we harness the potential of migration to mitigate economic disparities, adapt to the ecological challenges, and build a more just and resilient world for current and future generations. I agree with eco-philosopher Joan Macy, quote, "Whatever situation we face, we can choose our response. When facing overwhelming challenges, we might feel that our actions don't count much. Yet the kind of responses we make and the degree to which we believe they count are shaped by the way we think and feel about hope." Again, I also try to finish with the hope. But let me remind you, as Joan Macy says, there are two kinds of hope: passive hope and active hope. Passive hope is about waiting external agencies from the others to do something to fix the problem and to help us. But active hope, it is about becoming active participation in bringing about the hope forth. To be an agent of our action, to be active. So, in this spirit, I see this conference as a good example of active hope. Therefore, I am very hopeful about the future, and if we join our forces, our experiences, I do believe we can make a change. We can help these migrants, and we can find a solution. Thank you very much.
Grazie, professor Özdemir.